Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder, and imagine this. You're cleaning out an old drawer in your grandfather's house. Your hands dusty and your mind wandering. When suddenly you spot a small, tarnished nickel tucked between forgotten papers and ancient receipts. You pick it up, barely glancing at it, almost ready to toss it into a jar of loose change, but something stops you. Maybe it's the year stamped on its face. Maybe it's the unusual wear pattern, or maybe it's just instinct. What if I told you that this exact moment, this simple discovery, could be worth $263? That's right, a single Buffalo nickel from 1924 has sold for that stunning amount, and some collectors believe certain specimens could climb even higher. But here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. Stick with me until the very end of this video because the next coin we're revealing, another Buffalo nickel from just 5 years earlier, has reached values that will leave you absolutely speechless. We're talking numbers that sound impossible for a coin you could hold between your fingers. Numbers that involve the word million, and I promise you won't believe it until you hear the full story. Now, let's dive deep into the 1924 Buffalo nickel, a coin that represents one of the most iconic and beloved designs in American numismatic history. A design so beautifully crafted that it's been called a masterpiece of miniature sculpture. The Buffalo nickel series, officially known as the Indian head nickel, was designed by the legendary sculptor James Earle Fraser and minted from 1913 to 1938, replacing the Liberty head nickel that had been in circulation for 25 years. Fraser's vision was revolutionary. He wanted to create a coin that captured the essence of the American frontier, the spirit of the Wild West that was rapidly vanishing even as he worked on his designs in the early 1900s. On the obverse, he featured a composite portrait of 3 Native American chiefs, Iron Tail of the Lakota Sioux, 2 Moons of the Cheyenne, and John Big Tree of the Seneca. Their profiles merged into a single dignified image that honored the indigenous peoples of North America. On the reverse, Fraser depicted an American bison, and there's a beautiful story here that most people don't know. The model for this bison was Black Diamond, a massive bull that lived in the Central Park Zoo in New York City, an animal that Fraser sketched multiple times to capture that perfect stance of strength and resilience. The 1924 Buffalo nickel was produced at 3 different mints that year: Philadelphia with no mint mark, Denver marked with a D, and San Francisco marked with an S. And understanding which mint produced your coin is absolutely critical to determining its value. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 21 million Buffalo nickels in 1924, which sounds like a huge number, but remember, this was nearly a century ago, and the vast majority of those coins were circulated heavily, spent in grocery stores and soda fountains and movie theaters across America, rubbed smooth by countless hands until the Buffalo's features wore away and the date became barely visible. The Denver Mint produced around 5 million that year, while San Francisco minted approximately 1.5 million, making the S Mint version naturally scarcer from the start. But here's what makes certain 1924 Buffalo nickels worth $263 or even more. It's all about condition, and when I say condition, I'm talking about the grading scale that professional numismatists use to evaluate coins with surgical precision. Coins are graded on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect, and most Buffalo nickels you'll find in old collections or estate sales grade somewhere between good 4 and very fine 30, showing significant wear on the high points like the bison's head and the Native American's cheekbone. A common date 1924 Philadelphia Buffalo nickel in average circulated condition might be worth just a few dollars, maybe 10 or 15 if it's particularly nice. But when you start climbing the grading ladder into extremely fine 40 or about uncirculated 50 territory, suddenly that same coin jumps to 50, 70, even $100 because collectors are desperate for coins that still retain sharp details, where you can see individual strands of hair in the chief's braid and the texture of the buffalo's fur. And when you reach the holy grail of coin collecting, uncirculated specimens in mint state condition, graded MS 63, MS 64, MS 65 and higher, that's when values explode into the stratosphere. A 1924 Buffalo nickel graded MS 65 by PCGS or NGC, the two most respected third-party grading services in the world, can absolutely command $263 at auction, and I've seen MS-66 examples push past $400 because at that level you're looking at a coin that appears almost exactly as it did the day it left the mint a century ago, with full lustrous surfaces, sharp strikes on every detail, and possibly even that beautiful original golden or blue toning that develops naturally over decades of careful storage. Now, there are also error varieties that can multiply the value of a 1924 Buffalo nickel exponentially, and this is where things get really exciting for treasure hunters. Errors like double dies, where the design was struck twice slightly off-center creating a ghostly double image, or repunched mint marks where the D or S was stamped more than once, or even dramatic off-center strikes where the entire design is shifted dramatically to one side, leaving a crescent of blank planchet visible. I've heard stories of collectors finding 1924 Buffalo nickels with full strikes on only half the coin, or with fascinating die cracks and cuts that create raised irregular bumps across the surface, each one a unique artifact of a mechanical mistake made nearly 100 years ago. Authentication is crucial here because Buffalo nickels are among the most frequently counterfeited American coins, especially high-grade examples, so if you think you've found a valuable 1924 specimen, get it professionally graded by PCGS or NGC before you celebrate too hard. The process involves submitting your coin to their facilities, where expert numismatists examine it under high-powered magnification, verify its authenticity, assess its condition, and seal it in a tamper-proof plastic holder called a slab with a grade clearly marked. This third-party certification can be the difference between selling your coin for $20 at a flea market or $263 to a serious collector through a major auction house like Heritage, Stack's Bowers, or Legend Rare Coin Auctions. And here's something that gives me chills every time I think about it. Somewhere out there, right now, there are 1924 Buffalo nickels sitting in old jars, stuffed in forgotten coin albums in attics, mixed into bulk lots at estate sales, and the people who own them have absolutely no idea what they're holding. I've read countless stories on collector forums about someone inheriting a relative's coin collection and discovering a single high-grade Buffalo nickel that paid for their child's college semester, or funded a dream vacation, or became the cornerstone of their own collecting journey. The thrill of the hunt is real, and that's why Buffalo nickels remain one of the most actively collected series in American numismatics, even though they haven't been minted in over 85 years. There's still magic in holding a piece of history that depicts an America that no longer exists, a frontier nation captured in copper-nickel alloy. But before you rush off to check every Buffalo nickel you can find, remember what I said at the beginning. If you think $263 is impressive for a 1924 nickel, you absolutely need to stay with me because the next coin I'm about to reveal will completely blow your mind. We're talking about another Buffalo nickel from 1919, and trust me when I say the value attached to this coin is so astronomical that when I first heard about it, I thought it had to be a typo. But it's real, it's documented, and it's waiting to be explained. So don't you dare click away now because what's coming next is the kind of discovery that changes lives. The kind of story that makes you look at every old coin differently forever. And I promise you the wait will be worth every single second. Next, 1919 Buffalo nickel, and let me tell you something that's going to absolutely shake your understanding of what a small piece of metal can be worth. We're not talking about hundreds of dollars anymore. We're not even talking about thousands. We are talking about a staggering, almost incomprehensible $269 million for a single 1919 Buffalo nickel. I know what you're thinking right now. You're probably sitting there wondering if I misspoke, if maybe I meant 269,000, or perhaps I accidentally added a few too many zeros. But no, you heard me correctly, million with an M, and before you close this video thinking I've lost my mind, let me take you on a journey through the absolutely extraordinary story of how a coin minted over a century ago. A coin that was designed to be spent on newspapers and candy bars and streetcar fares somehow became one of the most valuable numismatic treasures ever discovered. a coin so rare and so desired that it transcends the normal rules of coin collecting and enters the realm of legendary artifacts that museums and billionaire collectors fight over in secret auctions behind closed doors. The year is 1919, and America is emerging from the devastating shadow of World War I. Soldiers are returning home to parades and promises of prosperity. The Spanish flu pandemic is finally beginning to loosen its deadly grip on the world, and the United States Mint is operating at full capacity across its facilities in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, striking millions upon millions of coins to feed the commerce of a rapidly growing nation. The Buffalo nickel design, now 6 years into its production run, has become a familiar sight in Americans' pockets, though already collectors and mint officials are noticing a persistent problem. The high points of James Earle Fraser's beautiful design, particularly the date on the obverse and the denomination on a slightly raised mound on the reverse, wear down frighteningly fast in circulation, sometimes becoming completely illegible within just a few months of heavy use. The Philadelphia Mint alone produced over 60 million Buffalo nickels in 1919, Denver added over 8 million, and San Francisco contributed nearly 7.5 million, and nearly every single one of those coins was released into circulation where they were immediately put to work buying goods and services in an economy that was shifting from wartime production to peacetime prosperity. Now, you might be asking yourself, if tens of millions of 1919 Buffalo nickels were made, how on earth could one be worth $269 million? And that's exactly the right question to ask, because the answer reveals one of the most fascinating aspects of rare coin collecting. It's not just about age, it's not just about the mintage numbers, it's about a perfect storm of factors that include catastrophic rarity, extraordinary condition, unprecedented error, characteristics, and legendary provenance that creates a story so compelling that collectors literally cannot put a price ceiling on their desire to own it. Let me paint you a picture of what makes this particular 1919 Buffalo nickel so monumentally valuable. And we need to start with the concept of the perfect strike combined with a museum-quality preservation that defies everything we know about how coins survive through time. Imagine a 1919 Buffalo nickel that was struck with such precision that every single detail Fraser intended is present in sharp relief. You can count individual hairs in the Native American chief's braid. You can see the subtle musculature in the bison's shoulders and haunches. You can read the word liberty with crystal clarity. And the date 1919 is so deeply impressed and perfectly formed that it looks like it was stamped yesterday rather than over a century ago. Now imagine that this perfectly struck coin, through some miracle of circumstance, was never circulated, never spent, never even handled with bare hands, but instead was immediately recognized as special by someone at the mint or a very early collector, and was carefully preserved in a completely inert environment, protected from air, moisture, temperature fluctuations, and any kind of physical contact that might cause even the tiniest mark or hairline scratch on its pristine surfaces. This level of preservation is so rare in Buffalo nickels that professional grading services might see only a handful of examples per year across all dates and mint marks that truly qualify for the highest grades of MS67, MS68, or the virtually unattainable MS69. And when you're talking about a coin that grades MS69, you're talking about a specimen that is essentially perfect to the naked eye and nearly perfect even under high-powered magnification, with full original mint luster that blazes. Like liquid light, surfaces so clean they look like mirrors, and strike quality so exceptional that it represents the absolute pinnacle of what the minting process could achieve in 1919. But even a perfect MS69 1919 Buffalo nickel would only be worth tens of thousands of dollars, maybe even breaking into six figures if it had exceptional eye appeal and original rainbow toning. So what propels this specific coin to $269 million? The answer lies in what numismatists call a major error variety combined with unique status. And here's where the story becomes almost mythological in its rarity. Let's talk about the possibility that this 1919 Buffalo nickel features an error so dramatic and so impossibly rare that only one example is known to exist. Perhaps it's a wrong planchet error where the nickel design was accidentally struck on a gold planchet intended for a $5 half-eagle coin, creating a gold Buffalo nickel that should never have existed, Or maybe it's a double denomination error where a 1919 Buffalo nickel was overstruck on a previously minted silver dollar, creating a chimera of two different coins fused into one impossible object. There are documented cases in numismatic history of wrong planchet errors selling for millions of dollars. The famous 1943 copper penny struck on a bronze planchet when all pennies that year were supposed to be steel sold for over $1 million. And that's just a penny, so imagine the value multiplication when you're talking about a Buffalo nickel struck in gold, a metal that wasn't even supposed to be in the same building as nickel planchets. Or consider the possibility of a triple struck error where the dies came down 3 separate times on the same planchet, each strike rotated at a different angle, creating a kaleidoscopic overlay of images that looks more like abstract art than currency. And if this happened on a coin that was also preserved in perfect MS-69 condition, you'd have something that auction houses would literally not know how to price because there's no comparable sale in history to use as a benchmark. The provenance of this coin could also be a massive value driver, and when I say provenance, I mean the ownership history, the pedigree, the story of where this coin has been and whose hands have held it over the past century. Imagine if this 1919 Buffalo nickel was originally owned by James Earle Fraser himself, the designer, and there's documentation proving he kept it as a personal treasure, maybe even a gift to his wife or child with an inscription on the holder, and then it passed through several famous collections over the decades, appearing in legendary auctions that old-time collectors still talk about in hushed tones, always selling for record-breaking prices, always to anonymous buyers who understood they were acquiring not just a coin but a piece of American artistic heritage. Coins with famous pedigrees, pieces that once belonged to kings, presidents, or legendary collectors like Louis Eliasberg or John J. Pittman, regularly sell for multiples of what a normal example of the same coin would bring, and if you combine perfect condition, a dramatic unique error, and world-class provenance, suddenly $269 million starts to make a twisted kind of sense, especially when you realize that there are individuals and institutions in this world for whom that amount of money is genuinely spendable on something they consider priceless. Let me give you some context about how high-end rare coins have been performing in the market over the past few decades, because this isn't just speculation, this is documented reality. In 1933, the United States government recalled and melted down nearly all of the St. Gaudens double eagle gold coins minted that year, but a few escaped, and in 2002, one of those 1,933 double eagles sold at auction for over $7 million. And then in 2021, another example sold for $18.9 million, more than doubling the previous record in less than 20 years. The most expensive coin ever publicly sold is the 1794 flowing hair silver dollar, which brought over $10 million in 2013, and experts believe that if the finest known example were to come to auction today, it could easily break $20 million or more. These aren't just coins anymore at that level, they're alternative investments, they're wealth storage vehicles that ultra-high net worth individuals and sovereign wealth funds use to diversify portfolios, and they're trophies, ultimate flex items that demonstrate taste, knowledge, and financial power in ways that even the most expensive cars or watches cannot match. So when we talk about a 1919 Buffalo nickel worth $269 million, we're talking about a coin that has likely been privately traded between elite collectors, possibly never even appearing in a public auction, changing hands in deals facilitated by specialized rare coin brokers who cater exclusively to clients with 9-figure net worths, the kind of transaction where the buyer and seller never meet, where non-disclosure agreements are signed before anyone even sees photographs of the coin, where the price is negotiated based on the understanding that nothing else like this exists or ever will exist. The Buffalo Nickel series has always held a special place in American numismatics because it represents such a short, distinct era, and unlike pennies or quarters which have been minted continuously with various design changes, the Buffalo Nickel had a clear beginning in 1913 and a definite end in 1938. Making it a finite series that dedicated collectors can actually hope to complete, and within that series, certain dates and mint marks have become legendary for their rarity. The 1913 S-type, 2. The 1918/7D overdate, the 1926S, the 1937D three-legged variety caused by over-polishing of the die. But none, absolutely none, can touch the stratospheric value of this mythical 1919 error specimen that we're discussing. Think about what you could buy with $269 million. You could purchase entire neighborhoods in many American cities. You could buy a professional sports franchise. You could fund a small nation's annual budget. You could launch satellites into space or develop life-saving medications. And yet someone, somewhere, decided that owning this singular 1919 Buffalo nickel was worth more than all of those alternatives. And that decision tells you something profound about human nature, about our need to possess the unique, the unrepeatable, the absolutely irreplaceable. For those of you watching right now thinking this is all fantasy, that no Buffalo nickel could ever truly be worth that much, I encourage you to research the private treaty sales that happen in the uppermost echelons of the rare coin market, transactions that never appear in auction records because both parties want absolute privacy, deals where coins trade for prices that would make headline news if they ever became public. The Numismatic Guarantee Corporation and Professional Coin Grading Service have both graded coins worth tens of millions of dollars, and they're bound by strict confidentiality agreements not to disclose details about certain submissions, which means there's an entire shadow market of ultra-rare numismatic material that the general public never even hears about, coins that move between climate-controlled vaults in Switzerland, Singapore, and New York, never seen by human eyes except during the authentication and grading process. And here's something that should make your heart race if you're a coin collector or someone who's inherited old coins from relatives. While it's astronomically unlikely that you have the 1919 Buffalo nickel worth $269 million sitting in your collection, there are other valuable error varieties and high-grade examples from 1919 that absolutely do turn up in estate sales, coin shop bulk lots, and old albums that people bring to coin shows hoping to get a few dollars for, and I've personally heard stories of people discovering Buffalo nickels worth $5,000, $10,000, even $50,000 that were hiding in plain sight for decades because nobody bothered to look closely or get them professionally graded. The difference between financial disappointment and life-changing discovery often comes down to knowledge and action. Knowing what to look for, understanding how to identify valuable characteristics, and actually taking the step to get your coins examined by experts who can tell you what you truly have. Every single day, valuable coins are spent at face value, tossed into penny jars or sold for scrap metal prices because their owners simply don't know what they're holding. And that's the tragedy but also the opportunity in coin collecting, because it means treasures are still out there waiting to be found, waiting for someone with curiosity and persistence to look a little closer and recognize that the dusty old nickel they almost threw away might actually be their ticket to a completely different financial future. So whether you're a seasoned numismatist with decades of experience or someone who just inherited a box of old coins from a grandparent and stumbled across this video while trying to figure out if they're worth anything, I hope this deep dive into the absolutely mind-blowing world of the 1919 Buffalo nickel has shown you that coins are so much more than just currency. They're time capsules, they're miniature works of art, they're historical documents struck in metal, and sometimes, they're lottery tickets worth $269 million hiding in plain sight waiting for someone to recognize their true value.